Hello and welcome to the Psychic Stories podcast, encouraging conversations about mental health. Today I'm speaking to Suzanna Hext. Suzanna is an athlete competing in para-dressage and para-swimming. She won a triple gold medal at the European Dressage Championships in 2017 and a silver and bronze medal at the World Paraswimming Championships in 2019 and is currently training for the Tokyo Paralympics in 2021. That's quite a 4 years, Suzanna.
It's been a busy 4 years, that's for sure.
It sounds it. How are you doing?
Yeah, good, thank you. Whirlwind of a journey that I've been on, but obviously go into more detail as we go through. But doing okay considering the pandemic that's going on at the moment. Reading that introduction, it sounds like you're doing all right. So the goal today, before we get into it, is to have an open and honest conversation about your mental health journey, to get some insight into the tools and techniques that have helped you and are available to accessible to other people. And then by discussing your journey, we hope to share and normalize conversations about mental health, as often people are not alone in these experiences. Does that sound good to you? Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, over to you. We'd love to hear your mental health journey.
Obviously you've introduced how what I am now doing, but to get to that point has obviously been a hell of a journey, a hell of an 8 years. If I go back to the beginning, before my accident even, I've always been a big advocate for talking and being open and having these conversations. So actually this sort of podcast is what we need to be putting out there in the public domain to try and normalize talking about mental health.
And it's a strange one, sorry to interrupt, it's a strange one because so many people talk about their mental health, as in we want to promote it, but there's still not that many people talking about it and doing some things about it.
No, and I still think there's quite a big stigma surrounding mental health, and I don't know why that is, because actually it's just as important as physical health and well-being. And it impacts on physical health and well-being. So I'm not quite sure, I can't figure out why there's such a stigma surrounding it. It's almost like people walk in the opposite direction if they think you've got a mental health condition. Actually no different than having a physical disability in what I see.
And I think these conversations are really useful because it enables people to, I suppose, hear the language. I think a lot of the time people, it's almost like with bereavement. Often people just don't know what to say. But we were doing a podcast with someone recently who runs something called the Anti-Racist Social Club, and he's like, just don't say nothing, just say something. And I think even if you get it wrong, the fact is that most people are going to be appreciative that you've asked them how they are, and they'll hopefully will open a conversation so that you can really kind of start to progress and develop a relationship.
100%. Couldn't agree more. So going back to my journey and the last 8 years, so I had an accident in July 2012. Had a horse land on top of me, rolled off me, and then rolled back across me again, just to add insult to injury. It's kind of a split second that changed my life forever, and all facets of my life, it almost felt like everything had been taken away from me, and kind of a door had been shut on life as I knew it at the time. I felt like my life was on track before my accident, and then suddenly having my accident, I instantly knew I was in trouble, instantly knew that life was going to be very different. Couldn't feel anything, couldn't move from the waist down, and
terrifying.
It was terrifying. And it sounds stupid, but I'm quite lucky because I actually can't remember a lot of my accident. I've been told by other people, so someone was there when I had my accident as well, and there's obviously people that kind of gathered around to help and support once I had the accident. So I've pieced bits together from what other people have said, because I was in and out of consciousness. So that's actually been quite hard, good, because I haven't got flashbacks like some people have. But also you can't join everything together and know what's happened.
And therefore there's no difficult to kind of process all the emotions that go with that.
Yeah, no, definitely.
And in the context of where you were at the time, you were a competing in dressage, you know, your life was, you know, I think I've read your life was horses. It was.
Yeah, so I was working at an equine vet, so I was competing, eventing up to international level. You know, life was on track, friends, amazing friends, boyfriend, like the whole thing, like just I felt like I was there, like finished uni, got a first class degree, like just life was good. And I think I was at that point in my life where normally people are either going off traveling or settling into a job, like it was finished uni and everything. And so it was very different few years for me in that, like that kind of age range than your average person. But yeah, I kind of lost my sense of like going back to like after the accident. I firstly suffered obviously significant injuries, had spinal injury, head injury, crushed my pelvis, crushed my shoulder, did a proper job of myself. But it was really low, like dark times, and I was in, like I got stuck in a bit of a rut, like I couldn't see anywhere way out at all. Like there was, for me, when it happened, there was no light at the end of the tunnel, like at all. My identity has always been around sports, riding, bubbly, outgoing, like enjoying life and like positive. And to feel like, not in control, not knowing what my future was going to hold, and not being me, because I then wasn't what I thought at the time. I actually didn't think I was the Suze that I was before. Whereas actually I was no different. I just needed to refocus and set back on a different journey. But that took a long, long time, and still evolving. Like it's not, it doesn't just happen overnight.
And it's interesting how you say that kind of connection to your identity. Like we tell ourselves every day what we're, who we are, what we want to be, and what we've done, and that kind of builds up our confidence and enables us to get out of bed in the morning. And it's really complicated and it's very fluid. Like some days I wake up in the morning and say, Matt, you're shit. And I'm like, some days I'm like, Matt, you're doing all right. You're like, okay, great, let's do this. And from your perspective, Suzanne, like, you've had an enormous change and transition, and like that, how you connected to your own confidence completely changed overnight. And all I can imagine as an analogy is almost like you were like floating and in the dark on without any knowledge of where you're going to go or how it's going to look like, which is really scary.
Like unknown is scary. Like it's it's giving me goosebumps just even sat here. But yeah, it is, like any unknown for any person is scary. And in the situation that I was in, obviously was particularly scary. And, I'm lucky to be here today. I know that. And I knew that at the time. But it doesn't get away from the fact that, okay, I knew I was lucky to be alive, but my future was not what I had set out in my head. I think I'll be honest. So when I went into hospital, it was the 26th of July, 2012, and it was the day before the opening ceremony for the London 2012 Olympics at the time. And so when I was in hospital, because I was in and out for 2 years, I was in a long, long time. And the Paralympics was on TV, the London Paralympics. And it couldn't have been more better timing for me. And I saw now some of my teammates that I've been riding on a team with, which is crazy. Seeing them competing, I was like, if they can do it, I can do it. And then I had the surgeon going, you'll never ride again, you'll never walk again, just categorically saying, cutting that part of my life out. Actually, no, I was pretty dead certain I was going to get back in the saddle. I'm not going to lie. I'm very stubborn like that.
But also like the fact that you weren't terrified to get back on a horse. I mean, that is, for me, that's staggering. That's like, you have, you've gone through this traumatic event involving a horse, and the thought of even getting back on is, I mean, frankly, that takes a huge amount of courage. Well, from my perspective, perhaps it was the easiest thing in the world for you.
No, I think I was. I mean, a lot of people think I'm mad. I'm not going to lie. That's fine.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's all good, right?
Yeah. But I think that was me. That's always been me. Like riding's always been since the age of 6. Like that's my passion. Like having that partnership with the horse, and that bond. Even more special after my accident, because I had to trust the horse even more to be able to do more for me. But yeah, there was no doubt in my mind I was getting back in the saddle.
Do you think, and if you don't mind me asking, do you think was that like you said, that stubbornness, did that affect the people around you in relationships, in terms of like your parents, your surgeon, your kind of healthcare team, who were obviously very worried for you and perhaps maybe didn't want you to do that?
Yeah, interesting you say that. It's been a difficult journey from that perspective. I had most of the medical team not wanting me to ride again.
Yeah.
I had one surgeon called Tipu, absolute legend, and still my like neuro consultant till today, like to get back in the saddle. And even like I had one of my neuro surgeries, I've got like a battery pack and an electrode like up against my spinal cord. Bit crazy operation. But he even tried to place it so that it wouldn't affect me in the saddle. That's how like he was excited at thought of me getting my life back.
Wow.
But then obviously the other end of it was my parents, as you can imagine. Massive impact on my whole family my accident had. They live in Cornwall. I was airlifted to the John Radcliffe, and that's in Oxford, and a long way. Like they had a long 5 hours of driving and not knowing what they were going to find at the end. And living up there, they pretty much moving their life up there. My dad's a farmer, and I think, I'll go into it a bit more detail in a bit, but I still have a lot of guilt from my accident, and that's been hard. My parents didn't want me to get back in the saddle again, and I think they would happily say that's like, they would be honest about the fact that they didn't want that to happen. And I understand that now. At the time, I was like, I just thought it's madness, them not wanting me to get my life back and get back in the saddle. Now they just know, they can just see the smile on my face. Like my parents came to the Europeans in Gothenburg, and they just couldn't have been more like proud, happy, emotional. I think my parents quite so emotional, but happy emotions. I was back. I was me, and happy, and living my journey. So,
and as parents, that's all they want, right?
100%. And I've had good support. I haven't been stupid. I've been on horses that have been safe, and I think my parents respect that I've taken that route, and I've been very careful with my trainer, Pammy Hutton. Like I haven't been stupid, because I can't risk it. Yeah,
and I think that's interesting. You're taking that kind of really kind of strict risk-based approach. Like before your accident, you would, I assume, wouldn't necessarily think about those risks. You were indestructible. You would just get on and do what you were good at. Whereas now it's kind of like, okay, I acknowledge that there are significant risks here. However, I'm still going to do it, but I'm going to manage them and mitigate them in certain ways by, for example, working with the best people, your best coaches, the best teams, and like you said, horses which have been put through the kind of, I assume, a test of safety in some respects.
Yeah, and like, because as a result of my injuries, I get a lot of like spasms. So a lot of involuntary muscle movement, and for a horse to be able to cope with that and understand that that's not frightening to them. We were very careful, and we've always been very careful on any horses that I've ridden. So
and that's a really interesting point. I'd never even considered that, because and as a complete layperson when it comes to riding horses, all I know is that you squeeze your leg one way and you pull your arm the other way, and that seems to drive a trained horse. That's all I know. And I mean,
that's what a lot of people think.
I was going to say, like, is that even correct? Basics?
I mean, for me, I don't use my legs at all, but
that's a very good
idea.
So that's a good point. When you are, if there is an involuntary spasm, then the horse needs to kind of distinguish between what is intentional and what is not. So I have like 2 whips that I can use. Essentially they're my legs,
and I can use my voice in my dressage test. So normally you wouldn't be allowed to use your voice.
Okay.
So now, so almost like the horses are trained, like voice command trained, if you get what I mean. So it's crazy, really, how they respond and the relationship that you build together.
Yeah.
And that trust that you build up is just incredible.
And it seems, you know, it gives you much more an insight in the intelligence of horses.
Yeah, definitely. The last day at the Europeans, Abira, the horse that I took there, my body was a wreck. There was like nothing left of me. And the music came on, because it's a freestyle day at the end, so you're dancing to music essentially. And he just did it. And I honestly swear to God, like, that horse knew that I needed him to do 90% of the effort that day. And he just knew the music, took me around. Just the most emotional but incredible feeling.
So actually during that you had to do very little. You literally just let him go on autopilot.
He also loved music, because so the music like changes for different movements. That horse, the music comes on and he's like, okay, I've got this. So yeah, he's incredible. Incredible horse.
What song was it?
Sorry?
What song was it?
I'm not sure what the names of the songs are.
but no, I was going to say, is it a pop song? Is it like what?
No, it's quite. I'm gonna say, like, it's not classical, but it's definitely not pop. So
but I suppose but also like classical music is quite complicated, right? So I mean, from my perspective, for the horse to kind of really get in tune with that song is another showing of that. It's incredibly intelligent.
Yeah, incredibly intelligent, definitely.
That must have been an amazing day.
Yeah, really amazing. I remember like leaning down and giving him a massive hug at the end, and just been like, just don't know how you've just done that, but thank you.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible. So yeah, so where you were, so you had come out, you were at the John Radcliffe, you were going through a very, very difficult time. Like, how did you get out of that rut? Is it something that just you took each day as it came? Like, was it support around you? We'd love to know.
So I would say probably my family and my friends got me through my time in hospital, and the nurses, NHS staff. But like, having the John Radcliffe visiting hours are very long actually, but having that like constant flow of friends, I was very lucky, very, very lucky with the amount of friends that I had come in and visit me. It gave me a sense of purpose, which might sound a bit odd, but it gave me a reason to get up in the morning. I mean, I was in bed, but like, kind of, I don't know, whether it's do your makeup or get your mum to like straighten your hair or paint your toenails, or like
tiny little things.
To want to present myself and like, just communicate with people and not be just laid there like staring at a ceiling and like kind of wishing each like day away. I guess that kind of helped me get through like every step. The other thing was obviously like physio, working on different goals with the physios each day, or every week or whatever it might be. That definitely helped me. I did have my fair share of complications in hospital, really quite serious ones, like very ill, allergic reactions, and taking me back to surgery. I've lost count of the amount of surgeries I've had now. And I would say that was the hardest part for me, was like one step forward, two step back, one step forward, two step back. So you thought you were getting somewhere, and then like it was almost like bam, no, back you go. And that was really hard, emotionally draining. And I think seeing the toll it had on the people around me. I talked a bit about the guilt side of my accident. It was a freak accident. Why should I carry the guilt? I don't know. It's an interesting thing that I would say I am better at processing now, but I would still say that I have a lot of guilt of the impact my accident has had on the people around me.
And have you had time, like you said, like to process that? You said you were processing it, but in terms of, like you saying, you're doing some physical therapy, I assume as part of your rehabilitation, there's a lot of like mental therapy and mental support, because that must go hand in hand with these kind of events.
Yeah, so I had I remember the first, I hadn't really like had much to do with like any counselling or psychological support before my accident. Had never really, I don't know, just hadn't never got into that side of things, but or needed the support that I needed very definitely after my accident. And that's okay. Like I was fine with that, and I accepted the help and I was open to it. I'm not saying it was easy to almost take that barrier down of like you're letting your emotions out and being honest and true about how you felt in that present moment. But it definitely helped me. And one of the big things I remember the name of the psychologist, but was like, just start writing some bits down.
Okay.
Start writing down, noting down your feelings, how you feel, anything that it might be in that day. Like it's almost a way, for me, it was a way of like processing what was going on, but almost offloading. Does that make sense? Like being able to write it down on paper, like, yeah, kind of allowed me to move forward with areas that I was struggling with mentally.
Yeah.
So yeah, did have a lot of support.
And there seems to be like that we've talked about on the podcast before a lot about journaling, and like there's something very powerful about putting pen to paper. It's weird, like you've got this jumble of thoughts in your head and then you write them down and you feel better. Frankly, for me, that makes no sense, but it works.
I have I mean, diaries and diaries of my hospital journey, and when I got out of hospital, and even last year I was going through a few bit tricky times, and like, just gonna write it down. It's worked before in the past, why not do it again? And I've got so many like notebooks of writing, but looking back on it, like when I look at these, I've opened them up a few times, and oh my god, they are hard emotions to look at, because I was so honest in those. I wouldn't want necessarily people to see, I mean, I was in a bad place, very dark. Like I didn't really want to be existing at times. And yeah, that, like, looking at that now in a written down, horrible bad writing, because I was on so much medication, but yeah, not good. But it also shows how far I've come.
Hugely. And the fact is that even in your darkest times, when you're having those thoughts about not existing, like putting pen to paper and acknowledging them makes them, I suppose, I don't know, it gives some element of context. And the fact is that as you turn the page and you get to the next day, you see that you did exist.
Yeah,
there was the next day, and then there was the next day, then there was the next day, and now here you are today. Like it's quite an amazing journey, and it's amazing what you have and can cope with.
Process, but it's like a process of adapting to what for me was a new normal. And I now say to a lot of people, like, I'm no different than I were. Like I'm still the same person as I was before my accident. I'm no different. I just have had to adapt to, like I say, a new normal and the limitations that I have in daily life. But I would say I was stubborn before my accident. I'm even more stubborn now. So same.
But I think it's really interesting what you were saying as well. Like, not to always really bring it up, but you're saying about those difficult feelings you still have now about like guilt and stuff. Like what's amazing from listening to you is that, because a lot of people would bury them deep, but you acknowledge them and you talk about them, and I'm sure you have conversations with your loved ones about that, and that's all part of that process. So for me, there's two things. It's writing it down and just keep talking and having those open and honest, raw conversation, no matter how difficult they are, how many tears they bring up, they really are worth it.
Yeah, like I remember, I'm gonna say it's got to be 5 years ago, Mum and I sat down, and she holds guilt of she feels guilty for my accident. I feel guilty. Like, not helpful for Eve. Like, feels that she shouldn't have sent the horse up to me necessarily to ride. It was a horse that we had bred ourselves. I would have always ridden the horse. I would have always done it. So it's nothing to do with mum sending the horse up. So there's no reason for mum to feel guilty. There's no reason for me to feel guilty. It was a freak accident.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I think sometimes it's more the overall impact it has on everyone else. So like needing extra support or needing to be taken to more hospital appointments, operations, whatever it might be. Okay, it's lessened nowadays because I can pretty much get on with life myself. But there's still always going to be that like aspect of things that I find stuff a lot more difficult than I used to, and I might need help.
Yeah, and it's by accepting that and having those conversations and almost like addressing each other's assumptions, aren't they? Like your mum had a certain perspective and that led to her guilt, but what you're saying, like, you could respond to it, say, no, that's not how I view it. Like, and that might not have got rid of all of her guilt, but would have at least alleviated it and allowed you to express it and talk about it in a way that both of you can continue in your lives in a really positive way.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I do think it, like, I talk a lot to my parents. I'm very open with my parents, and I think that helps because we're on the same page. We're working together. We're trying to help each other. My brother is the most incredible guy to talk to. Like, if I'm down, there is one person I'm ringing, and that is my brother, because he has the ability to, like, I can be crying at the start of the phone call, and I am laughing at the end. If someone has the ability to do that, I think that's pretty damn amazing.
Yeah,
like
100% agree.
Like, he got me through. I remember coming out of hospital, and he actually was living at home at the time as well. Just having my brother there each day, that support, I definitely couldn't have got through it without him at that time.
And also from his perspective as well, like to acknowledge that something tragic has happened to his sister, and we've all got responsibilities and roles, and like you said, if he's the one that's going to pick you up, I'm sure he made that extra big effort to keep you going. You know what I mean? Keep you picked up, like, even when you're struggling, keep you going.
Yeah, no, definitely.
And okay, so now, you were going through your rehabilitation, and now looking at where you are, like, would love to understand, because like, in the grand scheme of things, it's not many years. Like, how have you gone from there to where you are now? Like, it seems incredible.
I'd say, like, massively down to the support I've had around me. Probably is the biggest thing that's got me to where I am today. Like, friends, family, equestrian community gathering together, and now swimming. Definitely down to that, but also, like, I had a dream, I had a goal that I wanted to get to, and I think that kind of brought, like, me back again, like my zest for life again, like getting out of bed in the morning and knowing what I wanted to achieve. I think I, in hospital, had almost set myself like sights on para-dressage, and once I'd got my classification done, and I was riding my trainer's horse, the Bera, and was lucky enough to ride some incredible horses, and still am. I think then, the only way was up at that point. But it's just been, I can't even, like, I have to pinch myself because I can't even believe what's happened, because not only, like, with the riding, and then to still be funded, like, on a world-class program for riding last year, but then to go to the World Para-Swimming Championships. I was like, what is going on? Like, wasn't even, like, I was more of a runner before my accident rather than a swimmer. Like, I did, but I was using swimming as like a like physio and fitness for riding, and then realized that actually I probably ought to get classified and see where it took me.
So this is something that I'm not a very good athlete, right? So, like, the thought of competing internationally is not, I won't be able to do it. From your perspective, like, you were competing in international dressage, and then you've made a decision to go to para-dressage. Did you know that you could compete at that level, or was there a huge mountain to climb to get there, because like for me that would just be completely out of the, that'd be completely unrealistic. But for you, it was obviously everything's very possible. And then you thought, screw that, I'm doing dressage, let's jump in the pool, let's compete internationally for that. Like, I can barely do breaststroke. Like, how's that possible?
I think, like I say, I was really lucky with the horse I ended up on. The horse that took me to the Europeans, Abira. I don't know, all I can describe him as is like a miracle. He was a miracle for me. He gave me my life back at the time. And an exceptional horse already, in what he had done before I started riding him. And then, so I guess he made the journey a lot easier with my trainer Pammy to be able to get to that level as quickly as I did.
But also, and I know you're not saying it, but you must have been an exceptional rider anyway. You have to have been.
I think having had the experience, obviously, that I had before my accident, of riding at international level eventing, that definitely helped. You don't lose that feel. Like, I had to adapt the way I rode, and obviously using my voice and everything. But you don't lose that feel. You don't lose that ability to have that rapport and partnership with a horse. It's something you build up over years, which I have done since I was tiny. So so I think that definitely helped, from the dressage journey side of things. Not really sure how the swimming happened.
I mean, the swimming, did you just get in the pool one day and do a length and go, wow, that's fast?
I wouldn't say I was slow before my accident, but I joined the club in Swindon, and I just went for an assessment day and was I'll just see whether I wasn't even thinking of paraswimming at this point, just actually wanted to use it and enjoy it.
Yeah, and almost like another goal. I was going to see what I could do, right?
And being a part of almost a different community of people as well. It gives you a bit of perspective on life, having different areas of your life. And so joined, and then just did a few club competitions, but just for fun. And then my coach, Dean, who I still have now, he suggested I would get class 5 paraswimming and just see what happened, and see where I was at in terms of classification category. Ended up in a category that I was extremely competitive in already, but also needed to, I would say my technique needed a lot of work. I was far, I had the ability to almost fire myself down the pool,
power through it,
but I didn't have honed skills and technique. That's been still work in progress. So it's just been crazy, totally crazy.
But it sounds like you had, for both para-dressage and paraswimming, you had the foundations there that almost, and may I say, you may have had the stubbornness to keep pushing and pushing and pushing yourself.
I would say that is something that is also I'm going to say Achilles heel for me, because I push myself too hard, and experience the consequences quite often, whether that be an infection or whatever it might be, and run myself into the ground. I'm learning very swiftly.
Do you have to be much more careful? Are you aware of when you're kind of pushing your limit and then saying, okay, Suze, stop and pull back?
I guess it's evolving over time, understanding my body and when I need to call it quits and be I need to get out of the pool, or I need to stop riding today, or I can't train today. My coach, so I'm ill. I'm actually ill at the moment as we speak, so you wouldn't believe it.
No, you're not at all.
And my coach yesterday, I get really bad spasms when I have an infection or whatever it might be, and so I kind of knew the writing was on the wall yesterday. And it's just learning to listen to your body. I'm going to say horrendous at listening to my body, because all I want to do is be the best possible athlete I can be and the best possible person I can be. And in that, I end up like sometimes putting myself into a bit of a hole and overtraining. I did it over lockdown. So lockdown 1, I guess I'm going to go off on a COVID tangent here.
Please do.
But like 2020 offered like and promised so much for me.
Yeah.
And I guess with the aim for Parasumming at Tokyo 2020 was meant to be the aim. And I think like everything kind of started like unraveling and like falling apart a little bit. Like started the year great, went to Japan, on a training camp, best time I've ever had. Did some PBs in February, life was on track, and then it's just obliterated. My coping mechanism has always been almost to use physical exercise as a distraction. And I've used it like a lot, like sometimes in a good way, as in that being in the water and being on a horse gives me that freedom and almost takes away the challenges I have of daily life and puts me on a level with everyone else. But equally, I use it too much to almost to get away from the issues that I do have going on in my life, whether it be a frustration with my body or like COVID happening and not having that goal. I overtrained the first bit of lockdown, learnt my lesson pretty swiftly. And I think, a lot's fallen apart this year for me. I'm not going to lie about that. And I am very much looking forward to seeing in 2021 and looking forward to Tokyo 2021, hopefully. But yeah, that's a bit of a tangent, to be honest. But
but I think it's reality, right? Like, I can't even imagine what it's like to be so, to be focused on something at the pinnacle of your athletic, I suppose, aspirations.
Yeah.
And to have that completely, railroaded as a result of the pandemic. And of course, but then at the same time, when you're overtraining, I assume that when, let's say, if you do get ill as a consequence, the fact is that there's risks that hospitals are struggling for capacity anyway. So they're very real risks that like you've got to navigate, which must be really, really hard.
Yeah, I think I did learn pretty swiftly. Actually, it was the beginning of lockdown. We hadn't actually, I'm trying to think, it was 2 weeks into lockdown that it was announced that they were being postponed. The Olympics and Paralympics were being postponed. And I did continue pushing myself to the limit past that point because I was frustrated, and I guess I just had so many hopes and dreams pinned on that. But yeah, I guess we also missed, I missed the social aspect of training with my friends, and everyone missed it. There was, I was meant to be a bridesmaid. I was meant there's just loads of stuff kind of fell apart, and I like being in control. I like planning ahead. That's always been me as a person. And to have the inability to actually control what was going on and not knowing another date for the Olympics and Paralympics, and not being able to control even my training really. I was swimming in the sea the whole of lockdown. Going up and down swimming. My mum would take me down and I would train every day in the sea. On Sunday. And then I also, my brother adapted bits of equipment for me. I also had a bit of a gym set up in my parents' sitting room. Moving home at the age of 32 was also difficult. My parents are incredible and the most supportive parents I could ever wish for. But that's not something at the age of 32 you don't want to be living at home, and not having had an independent life. So yeah, that was hard. Definitely hard.
And it still is hard, right? This everything going on at the moment is still very uncertain. There is a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, but every bit of light that seems to shine, there seems to be another announcement that railroads that light, just pushes it further away. And it's an incredibly difficult time, and I can only hope for you as well, as when these things do start to become a little bit more predictable, you can just, like you said, get back on track and just keep on going. because it sounds like you've got a very exciting journey ahead of you. And you know, I'm going to have to say it. Are you going to consider another event?
I mean, I would
Is
love
two
to have a
enough?
go. I would love to have a go at para triathlon. I'm not gonna lie.
Okay.
Because the whole of lockdown, I ended up doing a lot of wheeling in my chair. Got
Yeah.
like a little front wheel that attaches to the chair.
Yeah.
And I loved it. Like that freedom. It's another. I guess it's another form of freedom for me, which is almost like a it's almost like a drug for me. Freedom. It just gives me that like ability to be me and free. So yeah, that would be the only thing, but no, probably not for the minute. I probably ought to just focus on what I'm doing.
Well, I'm sure you'll just casually start going and suddenly go past everyone. I think, yeah, I could do this. No worries.
No, I don't think so.
What? Okay, so just a specific question about being an athlete as well. Like, for people who have, you know, have goals that, you know, they might go out and, you know, people who are non-athletes might do a 5K, a 10K, something to aim for. But often at the end of those events, there's often this kind of like post-event blues people talk about. You're so focused, and then you're like, God, what's the next one? And it's almost addictive. You're like, right, I'm going to book in my next event. Like, does that, you know, I'd love to hear a bit more about that from maybe your perspective, because I assume from someone who is, your life is focused towards that goal. Once you've achieved it, then like, is there a difficult feelings about what next?
I guess I've always got like, I'm very much I like to have focuses and things to look forward to, but I like coming back from the Europeans, like, was on such a high, and then suddenly, probably about a week later, just was like, it's all over. Like, it's happened. Like, what am I doing? Like, and it's a weird feeling. Like, it's the first time I had experienced it was after the Europeans. And people had warned me about it. I never believed them. I was like, oh, it'll be fine. I'll just keep going. But yeah, I guess it's just for me, like, I just keep making goals and planning ahead. And also, like, this sounds really stupid. It's hard to explain. Like, my accident has massively changed my perspective on life. Like, very much down to my core values, and like life's a gift. Life is precious, and kind of living in that moment, and kind of soaking up that moment, like, is so important. Like, life's too short. Like, I'm lucky to be here, and I think having had that experience makes you almost want to like soak up every opportunity that comes your way, and like get as much as you can out of life. And like for me, I'm passionate about what I do, but I see other people that are unhappy in life, and I kind of think, if you're not happy, like, do something about it. Life's too short. Like, enjoy life. And that's what kind of my sport gives me, is that like drive.
And I think that's what's important about having the chats like we are today. It's just like, because if someone hasn't been through a very difficult experience, when you talk to someone about, you know, live in the moment, you know, life is a gift. You're very lucky, you know, to, life is finite, right? There's something like, I did this recently. Don't ask why. There's something like 30 odd thousand days in your life. And 7 of those 1,000 are pretty, either you don't remember it or they're pretty average right at the end. So there's not many days left. So actually, when you think about that, you think, oh God, I should probably try and live each day like as best as I can. But if you haven't been through a difficult experience, that can be very difficult to kind of understand. Whereas I think, like, hearing it from your perspective, and it really does, if you can empathize with people who've been through difficult experiences and can get to the other side and think, actually, this is how to live life. And that's something we can all learn from, I think.
Yeah, like, I would say I was always like a passionate person, like, in terms of my sport and loving life and school and throwing myself into everything I could before my accident. But definitely 100%, I have changed the way I look at things. It's also even like my niece and nephew, when I go home, like, having that time with my niece and nephew is probably even more important to me now than it would have ever been. Like, I just, like, you don't get those moments back. Like, it's not going to happen again. You need to like love that time that you have with them. And I don't know, it has massively changed. I would say it's changed me as a person, for the, I'm going to say for the better, in my way of thinking. You know, I'd still say I'm hard on myself in wanting to be the best I can be, as I said before. I'm kind of having that expectation, but not put on by anyone else but myself. But I guess having had, like, what I'm saying is having had my accident and being what I've gone, like having gone through what I've gone through, has made me almost want to get as much out of life as I can, which means that you sometimes overdo that. You almost, I do sometimes push it to the limit of what my body is capable of.
And it's, I mean, it's always good to know your limits. But like you said, like for your particular situation, you've got to be very careful, because those limits could have very immediate consequences, which could railroad your ultimate goals. Which is why I suppose you're much more aware of those risks now.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's not like, I guess when I say like I put that expectation and pressure on myself, and push myself too much, like that can lead to like a bit of frustration, or like that feeling of like, if you like almost failure if you can't complete that task, which is obviously not a nice feeling for anyone to feel. Like for me, the biggest thing I find, when I'm normally the frustrations that I have are with really stupid things, like I can't do a light bulb, I need to go and ask someone to get like help me. Why is that such an issue? But it's more because I feel like it's a very mundane task, and I should be able to do it myself, but I'm having to ask someone else to do it. And I think it's not letting that frustration consume you.
And I think, like you said, that basic task, for what you would perceive as a basic task, like can bring out some feelings which aren't about the task, but it's about asking people for help. It's about independence. It's about a lot of things which can very quickly lead to those feelings, and negative feelings just come up and boil over. But like you said, like you can process those.
Yeah, and like, you know, I'd be lying if I said I wouldn't have my old body back in a flash. I would. I would take away everything that I've done and had to have my old body back, not because I don't love the life I've got now, but obviously I suffer with a lot of like nerve pain and spasms, and life isn't easy. Like it, you know, it is frustrating at times. There are challenges. But I think that like you can, when you get frustrated, then your brain very quickly gets into a bit of a cycle of, oh, why can't I do this? Why is my body so frustrating? Like, and actually for me, when I'm stressed or frustrated, my spasms go up.
Right. So it's linked to your head as well.
Yeah, it's linked, and very like obvious link to stress. When if my spasms are bad, then sometimes there is stress involved. Not always. Sometimes it's other reasons, but so it is kind of learning to control the controllables, and like what I can do as a person.
And that phrase comes up more. I think it's come through the kind of athletic community, but I'm hearing that more and more. Control those controllables. Like, it really is quite powerful. If you think about it, it's a really powerful phrase.
Yeah, it's something my dad tells me a lot. I think he's told me from a very young age. So it's kind of ingrained in my head.
Which you've ignored or not?
So no, it's something I think is a good thing to like.
100%.
Definitely. But yeah, I don't know. It's just for me, like my biggest, when I'm frustrated, upset, or going through a difficult time, I just talk. I talk to people. I use people for that support, whether it be like I had a lot of counselling after my accident. I'm happy to admit that I needed all the counselling that I had. I now have a sports psychologist, which I still talk to about bits that rear their head about my accident or whatever it might be. It's not just sport related. You know, you just talking to friends and the people you've, like the network of people you've got around me, like what's the saying? Is it a problem shared is a problem halved? Or and I think that's
It really
is
isn't it?
pretty apt. Like being able to like offload and almost, that person doesn't even need to necessarily say that much. But it's a bit like writing. It's that offload, and I find when I talk sometimes you are able to logically think about stuff in your brain rather than that almost like instant like fight or flight reaction that's going on when something first happens.
And I think that's a really good habit to get into, because if you can teach yourself to pause and just acknowledge that fight or flight is going, and you say pause, just wait a second, then slowly the kind of red mist or the cloud just kind of dissipates, and you can start to really think through things logically. That's a good practice to have, because I can imagine like for you, when you're when you're mid-event or when you're in the pool going through that final length and people are right next to you, like you've got to think through things carefully. You can't freeze up. You've got to be able to process and say, right, I'm focusing on the basics. I'm just gonna do what I've been told, and I'm just gonna do this as well as I can in a really logical, calm way.
Yeah, and it's trusting the process that you've been through. So
that's a good point.
trust the that you've had, like, to get to that point. You've been doing well in training, your coach is happy with you, you've eaten well, you slept well, you've covered all areas that you can. Now trust the process, slow down in your head, and like let it happen.
Which is very hard to do, I can imagine.
Yeah, it is. When I it's London last year at the World Parasumming Championships, I did get a bit of a shock with the roar of the crowd and the environment and the atmosphere. Like that first heat, like I just so my arm stroke was just, I have quite a high stroke rate anyway because of trying to keep my like bottom half of my body up. But I just over it was a good race still, and I'm not taking away from, actually it was I was really happy with the time. But you could tell that I was rushing it, and I wasn't like actually going through what we had been doing in training. I had gone into almost like a flight mode of like,
and it's almost, I mean, like from a layperson's perspective, it's almost counterintuitive. You think, right, paddle faster, you'll get there faster, but actually it's, and I'm sure your coach, had a big part of kind of bringing you back down and say, look, you can go even faster if you slow down, which to me makes very little sense, but I can see how that works.
Especially with me, because I'm like, I just go faster, just go quicker.
Exactly. But no, slow down. It's like and I don't have much experience. It's like with golf. I like occasionally hitting a golf ball as hard as I can because it makes me feel good. It's like taking out frustration. And someone says, slow your swing down. It's like, I don't want to slow my swing down. But then I slow your swing down and it goes further. This makes no sense.
It kind of it seems almost like backward in your head, but actually being a bit more present and slowing stuff down a bit more,
trusting the process. It's a really good way to put it.
No, definitely. It's something I've learned over the time. I'm definitely a lot better at trusting. Well, they know what they're doing. I don't know what I'm doing, especially in the
apart from winning gold medals.
Well, I haven't won a gold swimming yet. So
I think that's a really nice place to end on that note. That could be one to wish you well to get that gold medal it's summer, isn't it? Next year.
Next year in August, Tokyo. Fingers crossed.
Well, we wish you from all of our sidekick community. We wish you really the best, and thank you for not only a fascinating and insightful conversation, but an inspiring conversation. Like, to think about the whirlwind that over the last 8 years, from like you say, you started beginning with your accident and going through that process emotionally and physically, and then to do what you're doing now is. It's amazing. I couldn't say anything else. It's amazing, and we wish you all the best.
Well, thank you very much. But I just say to anyone out there that is struggling with like any mental health, then you're not alone, and it's not a weakness, and don't ever feel like it is a weakness, because that's the biggest thing that I want to like get across to people, is that like it's okay. I'm using a quote now. It's okay not to be okay.
Yeah, 100%.
But that's so true. And
Yeah.
it's okay to put your hand up and be like, I need support, and take every day as it comes, because it will get better. And just like keep plugging forward, like whether it be like one thing I found is almost zoning out from like the like life, like, so social media can be a good thing and a bad thing. And I think sometimes you get wrapped up in, oh, that person's doing that, and actually someone's life isn't always quite as perfect as what is put on the screen. And just to remember that, like, and to just to enjoy like who you are as a person and that process of evolving. But yeah.
And I think from your experience, it's finding out who you are as well. Like, you know, through your experience over the last 8 years, I'm sure you found out a lot about yourself. And actually that's an awesome journey, right? Like, yeah, it has its dark moments, but you know, like life comes with dark moments. They come with light moments. They come with happy, sad. Like, that is life. And to embrace that, to embrace every moment, doesn't mean to embrace every moment needs to be happy. It's, if you're sad, just let yourself be sad. It's okay. It's cool.
Yeah. And I think what I found is like almost getting through the challenges that you have to get through makes it even more incredible when you reach a goal, or whether you achieve like a job, whatever it might be in life. It makes that feeling even better, because you've come through some really challenging times. It's always, life's going to be like that. It's always going to be like that, but it's accepting that, but knowing where you want to get to and enjoying the process.
Yeah, and trusting that process as well.
And trusting the process, definitely.
So, well, honestly, thank you so much for your time, and actually at the end, your wisdom as well. I kind of feel like I've been through a therapy session, so thank you so much.
Oh no, thank you for having me.
And thank you to everyone listening. You can subscribe to us on most major podcast platforms: YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Just search for Sidekick Community or Sidekick Stories and we'll pop up. And please do give us a rating if you like the show. Suzanna, thanks so much again.